Hello, good evening. Welcome to our virtual event with Toby Robinson. Toby, um, I know Toby's an Olympic swimmer. I know he's had a really long, eventful swimming journey to get to the Olympics, and I know he's got some exciting more swimming adventures planned. So, Toby, just tell us a tiny little bit about yourself to get us started, and then I'll jump into some more detailed questions.
Of course. Well, hello everyone. I'm Toby. Thanks for spending your Wednesday evening with me answering some questions. As Simon said, I'm an Olympic swimmer. I swam at the Paris Olympic Games in the open water 10-kilometer event last summer at Paris. I've also swam at five World Championships and five European Championships and the Birmingham Commonwealth Games, where I was actually the most local athlete on the team. I retired from competitive swimming after the Olympics last year, and I've been doing some exciting stuff since.
Okay, good. We're going to get onto some of that in a bit. To start with, tell us about your first swimming experiences and how you got into it and what inspired you to dedicate so much of your teenage years to becoming an elite swimmer.
Well, when I was a teenager, I wasn't just a swimmer. I was pushed into loads of different sports by my parents. I played tennis, I played football, but I was mainly a triathlete, so swimming, cycling, and running. Swimming quickly turned out in triathlon to be what I was the most talented at and what I enjoyed doing, specifically open water swimming. Swimming in lakes usually would be on the age group, I'll be swimming in lakes. And I got to the nationals in triathlon, and I had an all right result at the nationals when I was about 15 or 16. But shortly after that, I picked up an injury which stopped me running. And then the obvious choice was to go down the swimming route. Um, so I started fully focusing on swimming when I was 16 or 17, which is really quite a late bloomer in terms of the elite swimming world. You get a lot of kids coming through, when they're 13, 14, and 15. I really only first made my first swimming nationals when I was 17. And then I had quite a quick come up from there. I joined the Loughborough National Centre when I was 18 and made my first World Championships when I was 20. So that's kind of how it came through through my teenage years. And I swam in the open water when I was doing triathlon, but I initially made my name for myself in elite sport in the pool. The longest distance in the pool is the 1500 meters. And I became a very good 1500-meter
Yeah,
swimmer.
you're actually the English 1500 record holder, I believe,
Yeah,
Toby.
I'm the record holder, the long course record holder. So I
You
swim.
just want to reveal how quick you actually swum that because I think
Yeah,
people will be
so
quite
my
quite
personal
impressed.
best and the English record is 14 minutes 53 seconds. And I swam that at British Championships, an Olympic qualification as well last year, 2024. So I initially, before I was a real open water swimmer, I was a good pool swimmer. And that's how they pick the elite open water swimmers. They find the really good pool swimmers and they say, do you want to give open water a go? It's only another 8.5K you're going to have to swim. So I did, and my first ever open water race was in Madeira, and it was a European Cup race, and I won it. I beat the Olympic bronze medalist at the time. So I was like, yeah, I think I'll stick around and do this. And the good thing about open water, which is what I loved so much more about open water than pool swimming, was when you travel to these places, you get to really feel them. The pools are the
Mm.
same worldwide, but when you're swimming in the sea, in lakes, in rivers, it's so different, and you really experiencing that place, and that's
Mm.
what made me fall in love with open water swimming.
Yeah,
I really started open water swimming when I was about 20.
yeah, and yeah. So yeah, I don't. You're 28 now, aren't you? I
28
think
now.
28 now. So I know you were hoping to go to the Rio Olympics and then the Tokyo Olympics. So you had a couple of setbacks on the way, but you've stuck with it and persevered. Can you tell us a little bit about those experiences and how that shaped you and how that how you found the sort of will to keep going after disappointments?
I mean, both the Rio Olympics and the Tokyo Olympics, I was good enough to go. I just joined Loughborough. I've been at Loughborough for 2 years. So I was 20 when the Rio Olympics. Um, oh, sorry, yeah, when the Rio Olympics were on. Um, PBs every month, swimming quicker than the Olympic qualification time, and then as soon as the Olympic trials come round, I come round down with illness. But fair enough at the time. I was very young. I didn't necessarily really think about qualifying for the Olympics, even though I was good enough to do it. Um, I just got my head down and carried on. So that was glandular fever. I came down. What was much more painful, 4 years, actually 5 years later, because it was delayed due to
Mhm.
COVID, 2021. So I was about 24, 25. I went to Setúbal, which is near Lisbon in Portugal, to qualify for the open water race at the Olympics. And I was one of the hot favourites to qualify for this race, right? Um, and I swam the 10K there. I had a really good race in the qualification race, but I came second in the world on this qualification race. But due to a technicality in the qualification procedure, because I was beat by my teammate at the time, Hector Pardo, who won the race, I missed out on the Olympics because of that. Um, Even though
I
I
think
was,
it was the top 10 qualified, but only one person from each nation could qualify,
yeah,
wasn't
well, in that
it?
race, it was the top 15, yeah, and I was second and missed out because it was one per nation. So
Yeah.
that was gutting, it was
You're still
really,
you're still pals with Hector though, aren't you?
yeah, I'm still pals, they were teammates at the Olympics last year. But that was gutting for me, I I missed out there, but it almost made me even more determined to qualify for Paris.
Mm.
And lo and behold, I did come back 4 years later and
Yeah.
3 years later and qualify.
Yeah. So tell us about that qualification process for Paris. Is it quite complicated for the open water?
Yeah, they changed the rules, which helped me. So they were allowing now two per person to qualify. And what had happened to me 2 years previously is I had a bad World Championships in 2022, and then I missed out in the Commonwealth Games as well. I came fourth in the Commonwealth Games. So British Swimming decided I wasn't worth the investment anymore, and they dropped me off what they call British Swimming funding, which is
Mm.
basically a salary they pay for athletes. So in the 2 years, I kept thinking this is going to be harder and harder to make the Olympics without this support from British Swimming anymore. So that was 2 years out from the Olympics. I had to work part-time jobs. I worked in a cafe, I worked in a bar, just to fund, these training camps and the training expenses I was going on. And I had to work really hard just to qualify for the qualification for the Olympics, which was the World Championships in Doha. But I did that. I was good enough to qualify for the qualification. And then the qualification itself was in Doha, in Qatar, and that was in February 2024. And I just scraped qualification. It was a big sprint between 10th and 16th. Top 15 qualified for the Olympics, and I came 14th. So it was very close, but by my whiskers, I qualified.
Yeah,
That
fantastic.
was an amazing experience. I was so emotional because of all the
Yeah.
ups and downs that you go through a sporting career. It makes those highs even more
Yeah.
special.
Okay, and then tell us about you got to Paris. Don't tell us about the race just yet. Just tell us about the build up to it and the excitement around that, but also the nerves and the fears about water quality and all the questions you were being asked about. Would you go and swim in that river and how that made you feel, and even anxiety that the swim might not even go ahead after all that effort you'd put in.
Yeah. Well, obviously after qualification, that was about 6 months out from the Olympics. I was so excited. I'd finally achieved my dream. Um, I was doing everything I could, trying to leave no stone unturned in training, focusing every particle of my energy on getting the best result. You start to dream about Olympic medals, Olympic gold medals. Um, that was a crazy 6 months, and one I probably won't forget. But as the Olympics approached closer, the media started talking to us a lot more and more. As you know, the swim in the River Seine had a lot of media attention because the Paris Council had spent so much money, 2.5 billion euros, on cleaning up the river. And when we got to the Olympics, it was teetering on the edge of whether this is going to be safe enough for us to swim in. And the media was asking me over and over again, Toby, what do you think about swimming in the Seine? And a lot of other athletes who were also swimming in the Seine at the Olympic Games were saying to me, well, were saying to the media, sorry, they were saying, I can't believe they're putting us through this. You know, this is really terrible for the athletes. But I had a bit of a different approach to it, a bit of a different mindset to this. I kept saying, I think it was so positive that this race is in the river. They've spent so much money on cleaning up this amazing piece of, blue water, natural resource going through the river. And it's such an iconic moment for us as swimmers, but also for the city of Paris and for, the movement, the clean water movement in general. And I feel like the media started to appreciate that kind of wave of thinking rather than just athletes complaining
Mm,
about the water. But I was nervous that the race wasn't going to go ahead because during one of the triathlon races a few days before, they had to postpone the race due to water quality issues, high levels of E. coli. So I was nervous about the race being postponed or even cancelled because then I would have done all that effort to qualify for the Olympics and not swam. That
mm.
was going through my head. But in the end, the race went ahead as planned and everything was fine.
Yeah, it was a fantastic race to watch. It was one of the most, I think, one of the most interesting open water swims I've ever seen because of the current and the massive feature that was. Um, can you tell us a little bit, or talk us through, like going up to the pontoon, diving in, how I don't know if you even appreciated before you got in. I'm sure you've done some practice swims, but did you appreciate how strong that current actually was before you got in and started swimming?
No, it was the most unique race I've ever done. We don't often do river races, and especially river races that have such a strong current that the Seine did. We did one practice swim in the Seine before the race, and that was to minimize the risk of illness. And we only did one lap at that. So it came as a surprise, I think, to most of the swimmers in there that this current was flowing so fast. When we were swimming down with the current, we were swimming at, faster than the 100-meter world record pace in the pool. It felt fantastic because I've never felt speed like that in a swim in a swimming pool or in the open water. But then we had to turn back and come against the current on the way back. And if you actually watch the race back, you can see we're right up against the bank of the river because that's where the flow is the weakest, but it was still quite strong even over there. So we were swimming so much against the bank of the river, I came out with scratches all up my right arm afterwards because we were scratching off the bank of the river. Um, but it made it a really unique race and nothing like I've ever experienced before. And I think the people who did well in that race were the ones who could quite handle it. And I think I missed out on going away with the front pack because I made a mistake around one of the boys because the current pushed me into it. So, if I were to go back, I would have liked to have done a bit more river racing
Mhm.
beforehand. But as I said, they're hard conditions to replicate.
Yeah. Okay, just a reminder, if anyone has got questions or you think of anything, just pop it in the chat. I've still got plenty of questions for Toby, so I'll still keep going, but we'd love to hear questions from you as well. And I'd like to hear a little bit more, if you don't mind, Toby, about the different tactics or the different ways you dealt with the water as you were going through that swim. That how did you change your stroke downstream to upstream, for example, and how did you work out what angle you needed to swim at to get across when you were crossing the current at
Yeah.
either end of the course? And how did you manage the feeds because you were coming past the pontoon and being swept away from the pontoon where they were trying to feed you?
Yeah. So it was a 6 lap race, two long straights, one long straight down with the current and one long straight back with the current. But the hardest part about it was those short straights when you're going across the current because it would push you downstream and you'd almost have to swim diagonally. The tactics that I approached was long, relaxed, easy strokes when I'm going with the current and up in that stroke rate, fast strokes, lots of strokes per minute on the way back. That's what I noticed everyone else tended to be doing as well. But the real technical bits were the shorter strokes, and that is also where the feeding was. So you almost had to swim straight into the feeder grab your drink, do a few backstroke strokes to drink your drink, and you'd be well away from the feeder by the time you've drank it. And then you have to come back in on yourself to go back round the buoy. Um, yeah, it was so unique. But another tactical element to think about was if you're ever going to take any part of the race a little bit easier, or if you wanted to try and break away from other people during the race, because open water generally swims as a pack. You generally have these open, these big packs in open water marathon swimming, and the winners tend to be the ones who are successfully break away from the pack, and it's picking that right moment to make your charge. So, do you do that with the flow and try and take people by surprise and suddenly have a really big gap? Or do you try and just get your head down against the flow and show a bit of resilience and pull away from the group inch by inch? Um, so it did make for a really compelling race to watch, I think.
Yeah. So what, just in terms of, swimming in these difficult conditions, what like tips would you have for people on this call? If they're getting into if they're going to be doing a river swim, I know it's unlikely that people will be swimming in those sort of conditions, but if they ever did, what sort of tips would you give them?
Well, I'd always say swim with the current rather than away.
Yeah, but if you don't have the choice.
Um, But swimming with the current, I've also done lots of swimming in the sea with large waves as well, and that's a unique challenge in itself.
Mm,
But I think swimming in the river with the current is, I think you've got to think especially if you're on your own, you've got to think about safety and whether you're strong enough swimmer to swim with this current, because there's currents in the world, even me at my prime, I couldn't swim with.
mm,
But river swimming's something very unique. And as I said, I've swam in the sea as well before, and then dealing with currents as well is a completely different challenge, um, rather than just river swimming.
yeah. Okay. So since Paris, what have you been up to since then?
Yes, so I decided to retire from competitive swimming after Paris, and that decision was down to the fact that I feel like I achieved what I really felt capable of. I could have probably come back in another 4 years and swam at the LA Olympics, but I didn't feel capable of maybe winning a medal. And that would have been one step up from what I wanted to do. So I was satisfied at being, um, a single Olympian at the Paris Games. So and there was other things I wanted to do in life as well. But I still wanted to stay connected to swimming in a certain way and stay connected to the water. Um, so what happened is I kind of built on the momentum of talking about the water quality and how amazing it is that Paris opened up the the Seine for swimming. And actually, 1 or 2 months ago, they've opened it up to the public, which is fantastic. I don't know if many of you seen the images of swimming in the Seine, but that really makes me proud as an Olympic swimmer who swam in it for the first time after 100 years to see that legacy from the Olympics carry on, and this is what it's all for. I started saying stuff like that, and people started taking interest. I started speaking about it more and more in some corporate settings, and then Chris Lee from Swimmable Cities Alliance reached out to me and said, "Do you want to be involved in this alliance that we've built since the Paris Olympics about championing the right to access to water in urban environments?" Because I mean, Paris exemplified that. So I opened up the first Swimmable Cities conference, which was in Rotterdam back in May. And I've been doing all I can just to spread the message of swimmable cities and how amazing it is to have access to water when you live in a boiling hot city in the middle of summer.
Okay. All right. Now you've retired from elite swimming, but you've got a big swim coming up very soon.
Yeah,
Next week, in fact.
next week, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that
Yeah,
and
of
how
course.
people can get involved and how they can support what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm doing a swim next week from the source, well, almost the source of the Thames River. I'm starting in Lechlade, where it first becomes swimmable, and we're swimming all the way to Westminster. So that's 240k. Now, I'm not swimming 240k on my own. I'm doing it as part of a relay of eight. So we found eight elite swimmers, two representing England, two representing Wales, two representing Scotland, and two representing Northern Ireland, a male and female from each. And we're going to do 2 hour stints non-stop, so through the night and through the day. It should take us about three days to get all the way to Westminster and deliver a message to Parliament that says, let's keep our waterways clean. And the reason we've picked the Thames River is because it's probably one of the most iconic rivers in the UK. But we've also picked two Scottish, two Welsh, two Northern Irish to show representation from all around the UK. Like sewage in the Thames is not just a Thames problem, it's a problem all around the UK. And that's the message we want to spread with this kind of mammoth swim. And hopefully we get some eyes on it. We're doing it in collaboration with Surfers Against Sewage, who have been really helpful.
And I should have the link actually. Maybe if I can pop the link in the chat.
Yeah, do that.
It's on the Surfers Against Sewage website, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
and
I
we've got
no,
more
I've got
media
it.
coverage coming out as well about that as well.
Let me just pop that in the chat so people can see that. Uh, so if someone, do you want people to come and sort of paddle with you or cheer you on from the banks, or how?
Yeah, we do. We've got an approximate time of where we will be approximately, but as you can imagine, it's quite hard to say exactly where we'll be at the exact time. But if you keep an eye on the socials of Surfers Against Sewage, when it's going on, it starts on Monday at midday in Lechlade. We'll be doing live updates of where we are, where we will be along the route. We aim to finish the world record attempt will be from Lechlade to Teddington Lock, and we aim to finish in Teddington Lock on the Thursday morning, Thursday the 4th. And then we'll have a little rest there, and then we'll do the final part to Westminster on Thursday at midday.
Cool. And how are you dealing with that last bit? Because obviously past Putney Bridge, the
Yeah.
Port of London Authority are not keen on people swimming. Have you
Yeah,
got a plan for that, or have you spoken with them?
yeah. So for context, the Thames becomes tidal from Teddington Lock onwards, and the PLA is the Port of London Authority, and they're in charge of that part of the Thames. And they say you're allowed to swim from Teddington to Putney Bridge, but you're not allowed to swim to Westminster. And I have been in talks and talks and talks with the PLA about trying to encourage them to get me to swim all the way to Westminster, but they're not having it. They even released a video on their social media saying even Olympians are not safe to swim. And I thought that felt very personal. Because I was speaking to them that same day. What we're going to do is we're going to have a flotilla of boats that join us at Putney, and we'll finish on kayaks and a big open top boat at Westminster, and then we'll deliver our message to Parliament when we finish at Westminster Bridge.
Cool. Rowan or Lucy, have you spotted any questions coming in on the chat? Or do you have any of your own questions?
Hi, should I go, Lucy? There's a really good question here, actually. We've got one question so far on the chat, but please do add others, everybody. And this person wants to ask about when you're training at such a level, they're pointing out that it's not just a physical and technical elements you need to focus on, but nutrition, things like nutrition, but also the mental element. And we've written quite a lot about that in the magazine this month as well, about this kind of the mental effort and the psychological effort to train. And you talked about going through those ups and downs. This person's wondering what has helped you perform and what you're taking forwards now, and I guess what will be helping you in this challenge that you've got coming up.
Okay, thanks for that question. Thanks, Rowan, and thanks for sorry, I can't see your name, but whoever asked that question, it was a great question. Yes, you mentioned technical and physical. The sport is obviously very technical and physical, but the biggest challenge, I think, is mental. As a swimmer, you don't have the impact quite like runners or many other sports. So that means you can really get the hours in of training. And I was swimming. I do most of my swimming training in a pool because it's a more controlled environment. But I was swimming 30 hours a week. I'm swimming with a group, but that's a lot of time when your head's in the water and you're just in there with your own thoughts going up and down. There's a distance swimmer. I'm covering 90 kilometers a week, probably on average. Um, and you're doing this week after week, probably 50 to 51 weeks a year. Um, yeah, it's very mental, especially when you're, it felt like at one point in my career, I was just constantly getting, hit back, missing the Olympics, getting dropped off funding, this, that. You often think, why am I doing this anymore? Why am I doing this anymore? I might as well just quit. Um, but it's that mental resilience that, and who can show that, that really defines what a quality athlete is, I think. It's being able to be in your own mind and be comfortable with what your goals are and how you're going to achieve them. Um, I, I would say every athlete, every swimmer I know, somehow spoke about the mental challenge of elite sport, yeah, it's a real thing. And I think in the
Mm.
question, nutritional as well was another question. Now nutrition, as I said, I was swimming 50 hours, sorry, 30 hours a week. I had to get in the calories right. I'm burning loads and loads of calories. I'm going
Mm.
up and down, up and down. I'm burning loads of calories. I'm swimming 4 to 6 hours a day. So I was eating a crazy amount as well, and it's expensive as well. But I was eating 7,000 calories on average a day, five, maybe over 5 meals. And when I finished a meal, you're constantly just thinking about the next meal, not because you're hungry, because you need to time in your day when you're going to eat these to be able to be recovered properly and to be able to be have the energy for the next session. So it's constant, part of when I had a break after the Olympics, part of what I enjoyed was not having to constantly think about food and eat what I want when I want. Um, but yeah, lots of protein, lots of carbohydrate. That was my life for like 12 years.
I can imagine. I've just done a 5K swim, and I found the thinking about nutrition. I mean, to be honest, I didn't do very much training and thinking about nutrition, but yeah, just even for that, it was quite a lot. So I can only imagine. We've got another really good question. You're talking about swimming being very technical, which of course it is. And Andrew's wondering if you can give us some tips on technical body position to maintain speed and minimize drag. Also wants to know on long distance, how much effort do you put into kicking?
Okay, I'll start with the kicking question. Minimal, really, minimal kicking. So much different to sprinting. Your quads are the biggest muscle group in your body. So when you're kicking a lot, they take a lot of oxygen, a lot of blood is going to your legs, but um, the actual gain you're getting from it is quite minimal. I usually just kick, to be honest, for balance. And that was a big challenge that I was focusing on actually for years through my swimming career, was how to minimize my kick during a 10K because you'd save so much energy if you stayed balanced and your feet were dragging behind you rather than kicking, and you were using your kick um, for balance rather than from propulsion. But having that, so if you watch Ferry Vertman at the Rio Olympic Games, he was incredible because he could turn on his kick like that, and it would go from nothing to this incredible, like the back of a motorboat, and that would get the speed at the end for him to be able to sprint past everyone and finish. So that was a challenge we trained to be able to minimize your kick as much as possible, but also bring it in explosively at certain points of the race. So that's the one on kicking. With technique, I think in my career, I was quite lucky because I developed quite a good technique early on. And by the time I'd gone 10 years down my career, every time I tried to fix something with my technique, I'd done so much swimming before that, swimming with a certain technique, that I found it so difficult to change one little thing because I've done hours and hours of pulling a certain way or pulling a different way. Um, but if I were to give a tip, I think technique is all about having a strong core. We did hours and hours weekly of core training.
On
Having
top of the 30 hours of pool training, or
no, we probably did 3 or 4 hours of core training, and then another 2 to 3 hours of general weight training.
And does
But
that help you maintain a streamlined body position?
helps you maintain a streamlined body position. It helps keep you connected from your stretch at the top of the stroke, from the top of your finger all the way down to the opposite toe. Yeah, so I'd always just scream and shout about how important having a good core is for freestyle. I'm talking about freestyle here, freestyle technique.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much. So we've got a good question here from Stephen about swimming in the Thames, and about sickness. So he was pointing out that when David Walliams swam the length of the Thames, he became quite unwell. And Stephen himself is a former regular Thames swimmer. What precautions are you and your team taking to avoid illness, or are you?
Yeah, we are taking precautions, and we are concerned about illness. We all know the Thames isn't the cleanest river, and that's partially, it's why we're doing this swim, to raise awareness for that. We've got 2 doctors coming with us, and I also picked up a good few techniques from swimming in the Seine. And yeah, we've got a whole team of doctors, but we can never say we're not going to get ill. We're going to take all the precautions we can not to get ill. So hopefully it won't happen.
what would those precautions include, Toby? Can you be a bit more specific on that?
Yeah, it's funny, when we got out the race, we were told not to take our hat and goggles off, and they just soaked us and gave us a shower right there on the side of the side of the river. Afterwards, that was one precaution we took. We took antibiotics afterwards, and what else did we do? Anything that touched the water, they were just so on it with getting everything super clean.
Mm, mm.
Those were kind of a few of the precautions we take.
Just sticking with the subject of water cleanliness, of course, the something that we've noticed at Outdoor Swimmer is the number of people who seem to be shying away from swimming in rivers because of the problem of pollution. But of course, I guess our feeling is that the more people swim, the more people care, and the louder the fight is for
Yeah.
better river cleanliness. So, what would your message to people who are perhaps feeling a bit nervous about swimming in rivers be?
As I said, it's part of the reason we're doing this swim, to show that the Thames can be swimming all the way from Lechlade to Teddington and to Westminster. Sorry, that's why we're doing it. We want to promote swimming in rivers because it's a very unique experience, swimming in a river, and an amazing thing to be able to do. I just want to do what I can to show that the Thames specifically, but it's rivers all around the country, all around the world, can be swum in, and you shouldn't always be afraid to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Tracy's asking if you take precautions for your ears. I'm assuming you're wearing earplugs.
No, I don't actually take precautions for my ears.
Really?
I haven't. I've not really thought about it, Tracy. But thanks for bringing it up. I can take that to the team. No, I haven't thought about. I've never worn earplugs when I've swam, and we didn't in the River Seine. I don't think anyone did. But no, it's food for thought, definitely.
Cool. I
So
always wear
I've
it.
managed to get the chat open as well on my other screen, and I see someone's gone back and asked another question about another question from Andrew. Actually, he's obviously very keen on your swimming technique advice. And do you breathe unilaterally, or do you breathe both sides?
I breathe, or always breathe to my left. I tried trying to breathe bilaterally at one point, but if you look at all the best swimmers, the top Olympic swimmers, they all tend to breathe to one side, and that's generally because you can just get more oxygen in. It's about finding a rhythm in the stroke, which I always liked. I always breathe to my left. I found that rhythm, It does, when I'm doing some tests, it makes one side a little bit more unbalanced. Muscles get a little bit stronger on one side, but if that's the way your technique is, that's the way your technique is. But it's about getting
Mm,
the oxygen, especially when you're a distance swimmer.
mm.
Oxygen and how much oxygen you can get to your muscles is that, that is everything with performance.
So
Um,
even in all your training, you would still breathe to the left. You didn't try and vary it sometimes in training to
yeah,
balance things out.
I would always breathe to my left. I would occasionally breathe to my right because there are tactical benefits of being able to breathe to the right in an open water race for vision to see what's happening on your right. And I wouldn't mind breathing to my right, but I would always, lean towards breathing to my left. But if I needed to breathe to the right to see what was going on to my right, I wouldn't mind that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And can I bring you back to one question that came in? Someone submitted a question before we started, and I know you've done most of your training in the pool, and you haven't done so much wild swimming, or maybe you have done a bit more since you retired. But have you ever had any encounters with anglers? They're asking specifically about anglers and about how do you split the rights to access to the river between different users, particularly anglers and swimmers?
Yeah, I have had experience swimming next to anglers. Um, Not a lot because most of the open water races I did were, they were organized races and fishermen would keep away. But when I go out on my own and I'm wild swimming, I have had experience with anglers. And my opinion on it is it's as a swimmer, it's just another risk that you have to assess. Just like tides or temperature or the flow of the current or obstacles. I think anglers is something you have to assess for your own safety. Um, I think in terms of rights, public waterways, everyone should have the right to use them. Um, if it's private land, I guess
Yeah,
whatever.
it gets a bit more complicated with it. If the owner of the land has sold fishing rights, that
Yeah,
it
then I
becomes
would say
significant. Yeah.
if that's the case as a swimmer, I don't think there's much you can
But
do.
if it's a navigable river, the access is shared, and
Yeah,
it's usually I
but,
think
I mean, it's not an area I'm a complete expert on.
mutual respect and cooperation usually
Mm.
gets
Mutual
you the
respect, yeah,
yeah
mutual respect, and as a swimmer, it's just another safety assessment that you have to bear in mind.
yeah. Okay, so Lucy's popped a question in the chat now. Do you want to ask that, Lucy, or do you want me to read it out? So, um, she's asking, do you change your stroke? I think between pool. I don't know if that's between pool and open water. Is that the question? Is it, or are you ever tempted? Lucy,
No,
explain the
the
question.
question, because everything you said was about hammering out the distance doing front crawl. And I just wondered, did it when you were training for these long, massive front crawl swims, when you were training, did you ever change stroke? Did you mix it up, or was it always just front crawl relentlessly?
A lot of other swimmers did, but I was just a front crawler. I would do backstroke only to recover. To do a length of recovery, I would do backstroke, and most of the time I'd pull on the lane rope to help myself along. Um, we did out of
You
nine.
fit right in with a group of people I swim with.
Yeah, but I wasn't particularly talented at any other stroke. I could get by on flying backstroke, breaststroke. I just never even touched. Um, Sprinting is an interesting one because as an open water swimmer, a lot of these races come down to speed at the finish. You're trying to outsprint the guy next to you. So we did one or two sessions a week focused really on explosive speed. Um, and that would be a shorter session. So usually my sessions would be 9 or 10K. That would be maybe a 5K session, but the main set would be 25-meter sprints because you're trying to develop that fast twitch fiber in your muscles. So we
And which
train.
of those sessions was hardest? The slogging it out or the
No, no,
sprint
no. The
session?
sprint I always find easy because they don't last as long. It's over in a second. Whereas when you're just grinding it out, that is painful for like a whole hour and a half or whatever it is. Um, Yeah, so I preferred the sprint sessions; they were less painful. But I was better at the longer distance ones. But yeah, we did. But I mean, in your question, we did try. We did train sprinting. In terms of other strokes, though, I was never competitive, but I would just do a bit of backstroke for recovery. That's what I'd say.
Can you just talking about sprinting at that sprinting for that last bit? Can you draft in a race like the 10K in the Seine when there's such a crazy current, or does the current kind of cancel out any opportunities for drafting?
No, drafting is really important in open water swimming. That is something you'd be constantly looking for someone's feet to swim behind. You say it's the statistic is you save about 30% of energy if you're right behind someone, and then a bit more if you're behind two people. Um, so it's constantly something you're having to think about when you're swimming in a pack is how could over 10K, over the 10K distance, how can I minimize the effort that I'm spending so I've got the most um, for the end of the race, but also whilst covering potential breakaways popping off from certain directions. So that's what I love about the 10K marathon swim. It's so tactical and it's something you don't often get in a pool. But yeah, drafting was fantastic. When I was training with Hector up for the Olympics, we'd often have arguments about who was leading the lane. Because the person leading the lane had a harder job than the person going behind, because you even 10 seconds back, even if you're pushing off 10 seconds back from someone else, you're still getting a bit of a benefit in terms of draft. The whole water is moving that way. So yeah, it's something we've definitely been involved in as an open water swimmer.
So in that race environment, are you all the time like thinking, who's next to me? What are they doing? Where do I need to go? Who's likely to make a jump? Do you kind of have that all going through your head at the same time, and then do you think about, okay, I'm feeling pretty good now. Maybe should I give it a go? Or
Yeah, yeah.
how's that? What's going through your head for 2 hours?
All of these things you just mentioned. One thing, positioning in the pack is so important, because usually it's a rectangular lap you're doing, or a square lap, or a triangular lap. But you're coming up to buoys, and buoys are always exhausting because a big pack of blokes going round a buoy, all giving it max effort. You can get ducked under, you can get pulled back, you can get pushed in any direction, and this is exhausting. So you're trying to position yourself in the pack before the buoy to be in the right position, just to be able to whip round it without getting yourself in so much trouble. So that's something you think about. After years and years of racing with the same people as well, you get to figure out how people like to race. Oh, so Florian Wellbrook, for example, likes to swim off the front. So if he's on the front, it's dangerous because gaps might start opening up. So you're thinking about who's around you, who's leading the race, who's behind you, who's next to you, how do they like to swim. Whenever I swam next to Hector, I'd try and move away because he was really quite physical in the race. You know, he wouldn't mind getting his elbows out. So it's tactical, and it's being able to be aware of who's around you and how they like to swim. But it's the 2 hours. Say if we race 10K in 2 hours, it goes by in a flash because you're so mentally active during it.
It's so fascinating. It was amazing to watch, and I also really loved Daniel Whiffin's interview afterwards. I don't know if you saw that. He
I
said it
did.
was the worst thing he'd ever done.
I was standing in next to him when he was doing that interview, but
Oh,
it's
were you?
I saw Dan Whiffen came up next to me about 800 meters to go at the Olympics, and I was, oh God, it's the 800-meter Olympic champion next to me, and we've got about 800 meters to go. I was like, I'm done for. But then I think he got a bit cocky and tried to swim into the center of the river where the current was stronger. And as soon as I saw him did that, I didn't see him again afterwards. So yeah.
He did say it was his first open water experience. I don't know if that was it. I don't know if that was playing it to the cameras a little bit, but he's not an open water swimmer, so I think probably your open water experience put you in better stead.
And that race it played to the experienced open water swimmers because it was technical.
Yeah, I think when we met, the Hungarian team finished first and third, and you said that they were able to practice in the Danube in similar conditions, and you think that gave them a really a real advantage in the actual race.
Yes, yeah, I do, and I wish British Swimming had found a similar river to come and train us in. But it was they were dominant in that race, and I think it was because they'd been training in the Danube.
Andrew's just asking, how you accelerate. What's your strategy? How do you change your speed? You mentioned adding kicking. He asked if you increase your stroke rate, but how hard is it to change your rhythm?
And not burn out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those two things that you mentioned, Andrew, kicking and bringing in a kick after using your legs for balance, like I was talking to before, that's a massive one. Stroke rate is a massive one. And you mentioned not burning out. You've got to pick your times in the race. You only have maybe 2 or 3 big accelerations in a 10K race before you just don't have it anymore. And one's got to be the finish, right? Another one, you often find yourself accelerating into buoys if you're not in the right position, or out of buoys if you find yourself in a difficult position. But yeah, it is just increasing your stroke rate and bringing in kick that helps me accelerate anyway.
Oh.
And then do you also find that the pace, and I probably wasn't so obvious in Paris because of the current, but say you're in flatter conditions, does the pace accelerate throughout the whole 10K, or do you get like a spurt at the beginning, then it settles down, and then or is it more random, or how does it go?
Every race differs, to be honest. As I said, Florian Wellbrook likes to set a high pace from the start, whereas others, if he wasn't in the race might be slower and build up until there's a big attack, and then everyone's going hell for leather to the end. Sometimes you'll get people testing the water, so it's fast for a little bit and then it slows down, and then it's fast for a little bit and it slows down. It's really hard to answer that question because every race is so different. But there was one period, right, when Florian Wellbrook was completely dominant before and during and after the Tokyo Olympics, that every race would just be flat out from the start. And it also depends on the conditions, right? If we've got a flat, like you mentioned in Paris, the conditions were very unique. But if there's a flat race, it's a lake and it's really, really flat, it tends to be a quicker race.
Yeah, like in Tokyo.
Like in Tokyo.
Where Florian won, and he
Yeah.
led from the beginning there all the way through.
Exactly. And everyone else was just hanging on. But if it's wavy, like you're in the sea and it's wavy, or you're in a river like the River Seine in Paris, it tends to be a bit more random about what's going to happen, and no one really knows when you're going in. Yeah.
Okay. There's another. I think there's anything else coming to the
Yeah,
chat.
there's one more question about pollution that I was saving until we'd finished talking about racing, so we didn't just jump backwards and forwards. It's from Jackie, and she's wondering about how much pollution we are adding as swimmers from our sunscreen and we've got bacteria living in our bodies as well, haven't we? Is that something we should be concerned about? And I guess that doesn't just apply to rivers, but also to other open water swimming spots.
Yeah, I haven't thought too much about sunscreen, perfume, and lotions. I would say that is very, very extremely minimal compared to other pollution sources. But it's definitely something you should be aware of. It's something that I will now be aware of after reading that question. But I would say it's extremely minimal compared to other pollutants.
I think people they're in the sea. People use coral safe sunscreen, for example, and I guess if you're in the river, the river flows into the sea eventually. So if you're using sunscreen, it would probably be best to find some kind of sea safe sun cream, and they do exist.
Yeah, I'll look up.
Yeah,
I don't.
and you
use
can think
perfume
about hygiene
or
as well.
lotion.
You can think about hygiene in terms of, you shower before you get into a pool. So I guess you'd arrive at swimming with minimal things. But as you say, Toby, compared to the stuff that comes out of the sewer overflows or runs off fields and urban land, it's so minimal.
These are the
But
challenges that I really want to focus on, especially with the River Thames, on cleaning up those big pollutants first. But as you said, we should be thinking about what we can do when we do swim.
And I guess that's just as much about what we flush away and water conservation as well as what we actually have on our bodies when we get into the water.
Yeah, I was reading about a big wet wipe island in the River Thames.
Hammersmith, yeah, you'll be swimming right past it.
Yeah, Yeah,
It's
we will be. But a big loads of wet wipes have built up in the River Thames, and they've created this big, big island of wet wipes. And I think the PLA have recently started trying to tackle this, but that comes from what we're flushing away.
Absolutely. And similarly, I used to work for Viridor. I used to do some writing for Viridor, and they used to have to deal with fatbergs all the time. And that again is to do with what we're washing away, um, washing down our drains.
Someone made an interesting point that these wet wipes, the companies that produce these wet wipes, should have to clean it up. I thought that was.
Yeah. They call them biodegradable often, don't they?
Yeah, but if you see this wet wipe island, I think
Yeah, well, biodegradable in a number of years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
not before it's made an island in the Thames.
no.
So we're running up to the end. And Toby, you don't have to share this, but I think you've got some exciting personal news as well that you might like to share. I don't know if you do want to or not, but you did mention it to us when we met you a few weeks ago.
Oh, you'll have to remind me what it was.
I think I'll be in trouble if I have to remind you.
I'm sure it's fine. I'm not anything to hide.
You're getting married shortly, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm getting married. That's not a secret. No, yeah, I'm getting married in November, so that is something that I just can't wait to do. I've been with my partner Abby for 12 years, and she's been on my swimming journey every step of the way. And I can't wait to marry her in November. That'll be very exciting.
No, congratulations.
Oh, congratulations. Will she be supporting you on the Thames Swim?
Yeah, she'll be there at certain points. Yeah, of course she will.
Fab. There's one more question from Lucy, which is, are you tempted to keep racing at a lower level now you've retired from elite swimming?
Low level. What I'm enjoying doing at the moment is giving other sports a go. I've been swimming for years, and I still swim often. But I've been competing in other races at an amateur level. I did the London Triathlon, for example, last month. Well, at the start of this month, actually. I did a high rocks as well. I've been running in half marathon races, so I'm quite enjoying just doing other sports that I couldn't do when I was a swimmer because of risk of injury or just being completely exhausted from swimming. So that's what I'm enjoying doing now. But I'm a competitive guy, I'm an Olympic swimmer, so you've got to be competitive to be that. And I'll always look for competition. So yeah, I do love competing and trying to win whenever I can.
Yeah, but you did the London Triathlon, and I think you were a bit surprised by how hard the 10K run was, even though you were originally a triathlete. Do you think your body changed shape over the sort of 10 years that you were exclusively swimming, and you put on muscle mass, and that made running harder than it used to be when you were a teenager, maybe?
You know what I find hard about running is I would always, when I was swimming for 10 to 12 years at an elite level, I would always try and minimize time spent on my legs. I'd either be swimming or sat down or lying down, because it's just an energy burn. And I think that my joints, in terms of the impact that running provides, just weakened. The ones you need for running, obviously not swimming, but the ones you need for running. And all of a sudden, when I retired and I started running more, my body was like, what are you doing? This impact on your legs. And so I think it's going to take me a little while to build up the strength that running requires. But I'm a good runner. I've got fast running times, but it just, when I try and do lots of running, my legs don't like it.
I think a lot of us can relate to that. So does anyone else, we've got a couple of minutes left. Does anyone else want to put in any final quick questions before we wrap up for the evening? Complete silence here.
I was just wondering, are you doing, when you do the long distance swim, will you be wearing a wetsuit?
No, we won't be wearing wetsuit.
Okay.
No. And the water in the UK is the hottest in September.
Yeah, it's pretty warm. Yeah.
The whole time to the whole summer to heat up.
It's probably around, we measured it. It was around 18, 19 last week in the Thames. I don't know. Further up, it's usually a couple of degrees cooler, so you might be depends what happens this weekend. The Thames can cool down quite quickly. You might be as low as 17, 18.
I still think that's okay not to wear
Mm.
wetsuit. I try not to wear wetsuit whenever I can. You know, I don't particularly like swimming in wetsuits. Yeah, so we won't be swimming in wetsuit.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Really amazing to have you here, and thank you everyone for putting in your questions. I feel like I've learned a lot. I'm gonna try and balance my kick a bit more next time I go swimming. Gonna worry slightly less about struggling to breathe to my right, because I prefer to breathe to my left as well. So there's a couple of takeaways for me. I'm really annoying me. I'm going to be away next week. You're going to be swimming past my house and I'm away, which is so annoying. I mean, if you could just postpone it a week, that would be amazing. Just,
I don't know.
so I really hope that swim goes well. It's it's amazing you've put that together, and I think you've actually taken quite a lead on that, haven't you? I know you just say you're doing it, but I think you've been behind the scenes working quite hard to make that happen. So, congratulations on that, and I really hope it goes well. And I hope some of you people on the call can get along and see Toby somewhere along the Thames next week.
Well, thanks for having me, Simon, and everyone. Keep an eye out as we're going along. Keep an eye out on Surf Against Sewage website and social media. We'll be giving live updates as we go. But yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for all the wonderful questions as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.